My next guest on the Quantum Shift podcast is Daniel Barrett. He's a Grammy-nominated producer, acclaimed musician, author, and creative mentor based in Austin, Texas. He produced Ruthie Foster's Healing Time, which earned a 2023 Grammy nomination for Best Contemporary Blues Album. Barrett's production on the album was instrumental in melding Foster's Texas blues Americana sound with fresh, soulful textures, resulting in a critically acclaimed work described as an overwhelming feeling of love and freedom by rock and blues muse. Dan's a Berklee College of Music alumnus, class of 1999. Barrett's also the co-founder and frontman of Porter Davis, an award-winning roots trio that garnered 3 Austin Music Awards in 2009, including Best Roots Rock. Known for their genre-blending sound and dynamic performances, Porter Davis has been a staple in the Austin music scene for over 2 decades. Beyond performance and production, Barrett is the co-author of The Remembering Process, Hay House publication from 2014, which is a transformative guide to creativity and manifestation, co-written with the world-famous Dr. Joe Vitale from The Secret. The book introduces a technique that empowers individuals to remember their future successes, offering a unique approach to achieving personal and professional goals. As the founder of Rubicon Artist Development, Barrett mentors emerging artists, guiding them to discover and amplify their authentic voices. I also happen to have grown up with Dan when he was Dan Sumber. Now he's Daniel Barrett. And this podcast conversation, revisiting of 2 dear friends, was an absolute joy. We dig into his book, The Remembering Process. He tells us about his journey as a musician, and man, is it fun. We laugh a lot. I hope you enjoy my next guest, the Quantum Shift podcast, Daniel Barrett, and not anything other than that. So welcome, Daniel Barrett. I have to say Barrett now.
That's right.
And we'll jump into that, but welcome to the Quantum Shift podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Great to be here.
I know that I had an intro for you before everybody got to this portion of the podcast, but I did want to lead with, we are sons of Mahopac, New York.
That sounds like an insult, but you son of a Mahopac.
You son of a Mahopac. I mean, for some people it might be.
Yeah.
It's not. We loved where we grew up.
Very proud of it.
I'm going to lead with this very funny anecdotal story here, is that I do remember you throwing a massive pool party in 8th grade. And I actually, you might not know this, I had my first kiss at that party with Kim Galbraith in a closet in your basement. Yeah, touched. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Kim.
If you're watching.
I think
so Dan and I go way back. But the reason why Dan is on this has a large part to do with this book, his book, The Remembering Process, that he crafted with Joe Vitale. And we're going to get to that. But I did want to lay that Mahopac groundwork before. But I will ask you, when you close your eyes and you remember Mahopac, what do you hear? What do you feel? What does Mahopac bring up for you?
it is slightly boring, which is the irony, because that's what I used to say about this beautiful town that we grew up in. What's it like? Oh, it's boring. Because there were these beautiful, I lived within walking distance to these beautiful reservoirs, and we go down and fish for them. And now you realize that people would drive up from the city just to have access to these beautiful lakes and reservoirs. And at the time that I thought were boring, were really just stunning. Ironically, my beautiful wife would vacation in Putnam County, amongst other places, when she was living in the city. Yeah. So when we met here in Texas, of all places, she would talk about how much she loved the Hudson Valley. And I'm like, I'm a product of the Hudson Valley. But again, at the time, not everybody knows. Beautiful is not what a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old boy cares about in his surroundings. I wanted excitement. So I love it. The natural beauty, really, the lakes. So it's a very pastoral answer, but I really loved the wholesomeness. I remember fresh air, great woods behind the house that we would just wander out in as far as we could go and then somehow make it back for dinner. It was very idyllic. I don't know how many kids have that kind of upbringing anymore.
Yeah, I do think we're very lucky in that regard. And I have reconnected with a lot of Mahopac people, and that seems to be the major broad swath memories that they pull from the background of their minds and their souls, right? Is that it was a really great place to grow up. I do remember something, and I wanted to ask you whether you remembered this.
Mhm.
And from Dan's background and the introduction that I gave everybody that you are a musician, I actually feel pretty honored because I believe I was there when that spark happened for you. And I don't know whether you recall this, but there was a young man that was a phenomenal guitar player. I think he was a grade above us, and he was new to Mayapack, I believe. I think he kind of came in high school or middle school, and I was in orchestra. And after class, he was teaching you some chords, and you guys were just kind of tinkering.
Hmm.
And I remember he was showing you some basic chords, and then you would kind of play it back to him. And he was getting really excited. And he was like, wow, I love it when I tell somebody to do something on a guitar and they actually do it and I get to hear it back. And I remember like observing the whole thing and being like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I don't know. Do you even remember any of
I
that?
do. I do. It's actually, ironically, a good jumping off point to how I kind of got involved in probably a lot of what we're going to speak about today because, you were this Italian gym guy, so smart, so curious, but also had this kind of, I was a real sensitive kid. And I know it's hard to believe to your listenership, but being a sensitive kid in Mayapack and was not necessarily the coolest thing you could be. What wasn't celebrated. I tried to keep it under my hat as much as possible, but I felt a lot, still do. So when I started to learn how to play guitar, I never forget. I remember that guitar lesson or those guitar lessons at the band room. But somebody showed me Over the Hills. Oh, I have another funny story that's is a sweet one. There's a funny one because it involves the band Poison, of which you are a
Nice. I was with my band last night practicing 2 Poison songs. It's
but
still near and dear to my heart.
the sweet version is that somebody taught me Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin. And I was able to play it. And another one of these kind of high school guitar heroes, a kid named Michael, who looked like Jimmy Page, said, he's got a nice feel. And I was like, did I just get a compliment for having feelings?
Yeah,
And I
man.
was
Yeah.
like, okay, I might have found that's the first time that was ever a good thing. And it was about a Zeppelin tune. And I'll never forget that moment. That
So
gives
cool.
me chills,
Yeah.
30 something years later or more. Now, the funny story, how I first played guitar was at a party, and another guitar player we know, this kid John, who was in that rock band
Oh, yeah.
Illusion.
I
Uh,
know. Yeah.
we were at a party and there was a guitar there. I think it was an Ovation, which is like a funny guitar brand because that was like the brand du jour because of Bon Jovi. And he showed me the Every Rose Has Its Thorn chords, the G to C with the and I was able to do that on the spot with him just showing and there was some female attention. All of a sudden, like there was a little bit of like, oh, I know that song, and people were singing along. And I was like, that's forget it. Like that was
You're like, I'm in.
I'm in. My stock inflated immediately, and I'm like, this is good. But then when it became actually really important to me was realizing there was a place to put some of this sensitivity that I was carrying around, and it was positive and it was even celebrated. I'm like, okay, I probably need to stay close to this.
Love that. And I think probably more sensitive dudes out there that were in Mayapack that we didn't know each other because nobody was talking about it. That's probably the reality of the
Hide it.
situation, right?
Yeah. A lot of
It was,
masking. Hmm.
yeah, we masked it with our, I masked it with doing, benching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody had their coping mechanism,
It was
right?
it was a good strategy. If you
Yeah.
could do it, if you could push the weight.
But yeah, I don't know if I can now. I do remember you being very intelligent and us sharing honors classes and AP classes together. And I was wondering if you would share with the audience the sort of genesis of you, A, doing William and Mary at first, and being, I believe you were the only person from Mayapack to go to William and Mary, or the first person to go to William and Mary, and then your journey from there to Berkeley School of Music. What was that? That must have been really difficult. Like, I don't think we've ever even discussed it, where like that's a tough choice for an 18-year-old to make, especially when you're at this revered institution that I think it's like the second oldest chartered university in the United States other than Harvard. How do mom and dad react to that? And how do you go about making that decision as such a young man?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, this one is not, it's not as glorious. How did I get down there? I don't know. I kind of fumbled my way through high school. I wasn't a serious student. I was a good test taker. I was naturally curious and somewhat personable, but I wasn't focused or serious like some of our other friends. I was coasting on a little bit of natural ability, a little bit of a fear of my mother that I had to get enough done. It wasn't this glorious sense of purpose and studiousness. I was like kind of just figuring it out. And I was lucky enough to get into that school because I thought it was cool. And again, it's not glorious. Like I went down, I looked at a bunch of schools, and there's this place in Williamsburg at William and Mary called the Sunken Garden. And it was
Yes.
pretty down there. And it was a
Yeah.
beautiful day when we visited, my dad and I. And it was Earth Day, and a really friendly, pretty young lady in a very flowing hippie skirt came up and gave me an Earth Day flyer. And I said, I'm sold, like that was
I'm seeing a running theme in decision-making processes in your life.
when I was 17. I can't paint it as anything. I mean, I hope that my decisions have gotten slightly more evolved, but when I was 17 or 18, I was just trying to figure out where I fit. And it was beautiful and people were nice. And yeah, and somebody was nice to me on Earth Day. And I was like, okay, it kind of worked out. There was a slightly random, I knew it was a good school, and that was the directive, is like, try to get into a good school. So that was like, I wasn't thinking very critically at the time.
Well, then at what point are you down there and you just say, not for me, man. I gotta play music.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, by the way, that's a regret. I wouldn't frame it as such, but in hindsight, I don't think I understood what an opportunity it was down there. I had some great friends. I have some friends. I have a dear friend from school who's in this band, The War on Drugs, who have done incredibly well. Like you didn't have to go to Berkeley to have a great career in music. Apparently, he graduated from there. But at the time, again, I'm gonna start the story with, it's not as glorious. There's like not everybody I think who probably is going to watch your content is like they're all having a glorious time. No, it was a little bit of misery. I was enjoying school. I actually again got pretty good grades even though I was partying so much. I was partying a lot. And
I remember I went down one weekend. Spotty memories of being at a frat party
it
somewhere.
was nuts, and I rushed a fraternity, which wasn't quite me. I just was trying to, again, figure out where I fit in. I was trying that at Mayapack, and it wasn't like it was all bad. I mean, that's part of what being a young man is, right? I'm 17, 18, trying stuff on, trying on hats. And so I tried on this partying hat. I tried on a few things. I really loved my classes. I took philosophy classes and film classes and world music classes. So I was really grooving, and I was having lunch with professors and stuff. So I really enjoyed that part of it. But I got too into smoking weed, and I got way into drinking, and I got kind of depressed and a little anxious, and I just was like not feeling it. And I had some weird instinct that the only thing that was going to carry me forward was to focus on the thing that I wanted most, which was to play music all the time. So it was like
I
some
love it.
weird sense that if I kind of hedge, I'm going to sink into a deeper depression. The only thing that's going to pull me forward is my deepest desire. And I didn't have those exact words for it, but I just felt like it was my only hope. I kind of see like Princess Leia in that little video, and it's your only hope. It's
Yeah.
like to really hone in on the thing. And I don't know if I said this to you when we chatted a few weeks back, but I remember specifically saying to myself, if I don't pursue music all in, I am going to regret it deeply when I'm 50. And I turned 50 this year, and it was true. Like I did pursue it, and I'm so happy I did. And I can't imagine my life if I hadn't. But that was my only grace, is that some part of me knew that I was just going to languish if I ignored the call.
That's powerful, man, especially at such a young age. In order to heed that internal calling is admirable and impressive. How did mom and dad react to that?
Yeah, and again, admirable and impressive. That's very generous, but it was a little hazy. It was a
Mhm.
little could have been impulsive. I don't know. It was when you're in at that time, it didn't feel noble. I felt like I was just grasping. And
Well,
my
that's
parents
interesting.
were terrified and frustrated and skeptical. Somehow they had my back. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I've ever stopped and appreciated that enough, but they're like, Okay. Kind of like, okay, with a question mark, okay, I guess. Tell me more about this. Like, okay, I guess. That was sort of,
Interesting.
it was a reluctant, fine, support you in this. We don't get it. You have a little bit of runway.
Okay, so then you pack your bags, you get to Berkeley. What's that like? What's that like? You're a New York kid, suburbs of New York, hour north of the city, right? But we can't say we're upstate. People from upstate get very upset with
Yes. Yeah.
anybody from Mayapack. I'm in Westchester now in Chappaqua. If I say upstate, people get very upset. You're not upstate. So you're New York, you go down to Virginia for a year, and then you're up in Boston playing music. Is that just cultural whiplash? Or is that just, I love this. I'm where I'm supposed to be. This
No, it
is
was awful.
driving.
I'm laughing because once again, there was this period where it's not particularly glorious, man. It was pretty,
Yeah, pretty ugly.
it was pretty ugly with moments, but flashes of like little breadcrumbs, like either
Right.
slightly hallucinatory or I see some pattern. There's some way forward here, but mostly so when I left Berkeley after 2 semesters, it was a summer semester. I went straight from spring at William and Mary to summer at Berkeley. And
Okay.
the idea with my family was like, okay, well, why don't you try the summer term and just see how it is? And then you can have this,
Got it.
you could
Because I was gonna
always,
say that sounds pretty aggressive, right? It's like boom, boom. You're like, okay,
let's
they're giving you that out to like test it for the summer, not to mess with the William and
I
Mary ecosystem.
deferred William and Mary. I didn't quit per se, whatever that even
Got it.
means. I mean, this is, we're talking about the mid 90s. So somewhere, but as far as I can remember, it was like, let's test this out. I guess I liked it enough to stay on, and I did stay on. But when I left, my grade point average at Berkeley, I had good grades at William and Mary, but my grade point average at Berkeley was like a 1.93. And then I was trying. I wasn't just screwing around and I wasn't partying, but I didn't know at the time, again, just like feelings weren't yet, just like kids didn't have feelings in the early 90s. Uh,
Yeah.
Also, different types of learning styles were not like that wasn't as common. And, I have the ADD diagnosis is nuanced, but I had some different way that I was processing. So sitting in practice rooms, staring at notes on a page wasn't all working for me. But again, there were these moments. I had a few teachers. I remember sitting in an audition for some ensembles and they put some sheet music in front of me and I was a terrible reader. And the guy was looking at me like, how did you get in here? Like, why are you like, what is this? And then he's like, well, what do you play? I was like, I play blues mostly. He's like, okay, let's play a blues. And then we played a blues together. And he's like, you sound great, man. I was like, thanks, man. And he's like, you'll be okay. You got to learn how to read, but you got some. So there was some instincts there where the musical instincts were there, the sort of processing notes on a page part, that sort of pedantic. When we get to my first touring band is when I started to actually feel where I was starting to find my place. But up until this point, from high school all the way to Berkeley, I was called forward, but really nobody was putting any money on me. I wasn't a horse anyone was betting on for much.
I find that completely fascinating because I'm surprised to hear that. I thought it was going to be the complete opposite. I thought you were going to be, 4.0s at Berkeley,
Nope.
super gifted. This is
No.
incredible.
No.
Is that still the case for you? Do you feel like the academic music reading, music writing aspect of music is just not your wheelhouse and then it's let me just feel the music, let me get into the blues this way?
Mm,
Does that still resonate for you today or is that am I sort of generalizing too much that there's a
no,
lot
that
more internal nuance?
it is nuanced, and what has happened since is 30 years. That was 30 years ago, and
Yeah,
I ended up getting a degree in music and having an unbelievable mentor. And that's an incredible story. When I went to UMass Boston, where I ultimately graduated from, I had an unbelievable mentor who changed my life, and I really clawed my way into. So I'm pretty technically grounded now in music, as much as I want to be. And I learned how to learn and I learned how I learn. But when I was
I
pre
love that.
20, I had no idea. I didn't really know exactly who I was. And I certainly didn't know how I absorb information in the world, which is in a very nonlinear fashion and a very experiential fashion. So, but doing it linearly in a classroom was really hard work for me and almost impossible till I got a little bit older. And even then wasn't ideal, but I figured some things out. So it's been I really want to paint the picture that the, the, the hero's journey, because, I mean, like, fast forwarding, I do feel a lot more confident, grounded, and accomplished in a lot of things, but it has been a very windy and bumpy road, but I wouldn't trade any of it. And I think that's what's really
Yeah.
interesting and important. If I have anything to share, it's just how ungifted I seem to almost everybody around me for a long time too.
Well, I mean, is the end of that except for yourself? Did you always have a sort of intrinsic belief that music was your thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I had some personal moments. I'd had some peak experiences in music. It becomes spiritual. There's a gentleman that we went to school with. I don't know if you knew him, and I'm going to shout him out. His name was Josh Obajiski. I'm going to put that in. He was a little younger than us, and we were in a band together briefly, that we played these overnight lockout dances we used to have at school, and we
That's
were
cool.
we were calling ourselves Yosemite Crotch, and then the school wouldn't let us play under that name because it had the word crotch in it, so we had to change the name to Chia Savalas. And
These are great.
so shout out to Yosemite Crotch slash Chia Savalas and all my homies from Mayapack. Again, you son of a Mayapack, you sons of a Mayapack.
Sons of Mayapack, yeah.
We had some jams in his bedroom on 2 acoustic guitars. I remember, for the music nerds out there, was like drop D droning music. And if
Mhm.
you don't know, it's just if you don't play, it's like this kind of early Smashing Pumpkins slash almost like a raga Indian vibe with notes
Mm,
ringing out. And we would play music and it would be like 20 minutes later, completely sober, almost like a mystical experience. Like we got lost and had nothing written. That's when it got a little spiritual. I did have this faith. And I'm like, that was so much better than almost anything I've ever experienced in my life. And if there is a God, which I do believe, that God did not put that experience in my life just to mess with me. Like that was a breadcrumb saying like that exists. And there are some people who get to experience that regularly because they have made their lives in that. And I'm like, if I can get the most, even that I never thought I'd have that all the time, but if I can get close to that and live anywhere near that zip code of feeling, I
yeah,
will. It just made everything else pale. And I mean everything else, even the girls, even the booze, even the weed, even attention. It was like magic. So
yeah.
that was a beacon energetically for me to be like, there is some other shit going on out there. And I will dedicate myself to being as much in that beacon as possible, hell or high water. That was kind of that was,
Wow.
the beauty of those moments with Josh.
That's awesome, man. That's very cool.
It was neat.
Very, very
Yeah.
so around this time, you're at Berkeley, you're focused on music. When did you like your public name is Barrett, your
Yeah.
family name is Sumber. When did that shift happen for you? And like, was there a part of you that each name sort of protects, or was it a, hey, this is going to be my stage name, or is it just I am going on this journey and that is going to be something completely different than what I've experienced this portion of my life moving into the next portion of my life?
Oh, I like that question. So to place hold some chapters after Berkeley, I went on tour with Hypnotic Clambake, which was actually a really legitimate jam band, and we toured the country. And that was a lot of things. We can come back to that. A lot of things came alive for me on the road. Then I moved back
Mm,
to Boston and worked and got my degree at UMass Boston. And towards the end of that is when I was like, okay, I'm done with school now. It took me 9 years to get my degree. I was really on a circuitous path. 5 colleges, 9 degrees. It was really a wandering, a meandering path for such a long time. And at the end of that, I was like, okay, now I got to put this shingle out. I've learned so much. I was starting to get a little bit of more of a sense of who I was, and I made this album that was my first sort of legitimate full length album and I was still kind of going by Daniel Sumber. And I would go out there, and Barrett's my middle name, so it's always been Daniel Barrett Sumber. Like, so it was, I never had to even like change anything. I was always,
You know, I don't even think I knew that. I
yeah,
don't think I knew that.
yeah.
So where does that middle name come from?
My dad told me that he sat next to a guy named S. Barrett Hickman in law school, and he just thought it was a cool middle name. He just thought it sounded stately. So
I mean, he wasn't wrong.
no, he wasn't. Or maybe, and I think he ended up in Putnam County, and they were friends. My dad ended up in Putnam. I don't remember the exact story about S. Barrett Hickman, but I think he ended up in Putnam County somehow. And so my dad just thought it sounded dope. And so I thought so too. What happened with Sumber was several things. It was energetic. I remember years later, my wife's uncle, it was, talking about the name. He's like, it's a quarterback name. It's
Yeah.
it had sort of it was like I can either bear it or bare my chest or bear, like it had sort of it was
Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
verb. And
Yeah.
it also, when I was playing out, I wasn't very good. Again, like that is like the first, I wasn't this glorious musician. I was just hanging on bare, like with white knuckles for dear life to even be considered not a joke in this. And so when I'd play and they'd say, next at the open mic, Daniel Somner, Daniel Somber, Daniel Somner, Daniel Sommers, like no one ever got it right. I don't think the worst one I remember was like Sonabin. I'm like, how did you even get that? It was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. So
Easy.
it was constantly getting mistaken. And so it was sort of interesting. Like I just didn't have the confidence or the talent to spend on being misunderstood. I was like, I need to give
I love
every,
that quote.
yeah.
I love that quote, dude. Holy moly. That's so good. That's so good.
There's this kid named MJ Lenderman who's really popular right now, who's got like this kind of, he's sort of like a Wilco like, and I'm like, I didn't have the swagger or the talent to be an MJ Lenderman or a Daniel Sumber. I needed like I'm like, oh, good, clear name. Daniel Barrett, boom, it was on. So it was a clawing hooker by crook. I love the Grateful Dead. I remember seeing Bobby Weir on CBS Sunday Morning, I think it was, and they said, "When did you first know you had talent?" And Bobby was like, "I never knew I had talent. I was just like clawing, like I was just hanging on." I forget exactly what he said, but I was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Yeah, it just resonated for you. Yeah.
It was a fucking dogfight. Pardon my language. It was a dogfight
Uh-huh.
all the time
Yeah.
because I just had to have it. And I'd have these peak moments here and there, maybe a couple a year. I'd write a pretty good song or I'd have a great jam, but it wasn't happening all the time. And I couldn't call it up at will. It was just these tantalizing breadcrumbs that I was getting. So I was like, they would give me a little bit of hope and I'd keep clawing, but I had to learn some fight. One of the things about Mayapack and about my upbringing was, we had some inner struggle in my house. We never had to worry about a meal, and I had some clean Nikes
Yeah.
on the first day of school, which at the time I just took for granted, just like it was like a boring town. It was a gorgeous town and it was safe. And I had good food and I had clean Nikes. Like all that to me was just like, I hadn't really experienced anything outwardly. I had some inner finding to do, but I had to be on my hero's journey and really have to work for something and fight for something I believed in. I was kind of coasting until I found
Love
something
it.
I loved so much that it, it just, it just drew me forward constantly. Still does every day, by the way,
For you
this,
forward.
this far
Was
into it.
is this around the time that you ran into the fellows for Porter Davis? Is this like you
Well,
were kind of getting your stride? Like, what's that timeline?
the timeline goes like this. I sort of leave Berkeley because I have a 1.93 and it was super expensive. And I go on tour with Hypnotic Clambake for like half a year. And that's the first time where we were playing like 6 days a week and people were in front of it. They had a fan base, like the guys from Fish, like that band. It was this weird, jammy Cajun klezmer Zydeco jam band. And in that scene, we'd played festivals and I was plugging in every day. And I was like, I learned by doing. I learned by dropping my ass in the
Mhm.
deep end and having people stare at me and like just sink or swim. It was like using
Right.
all you learn later that if you have a little ADD, like you need stimulation, you need
Yeah.
basically adrenaline or whatever. So I dropping my ass in the deep end. I actually got quite a bit better. I learned street smarts. I learned how to turn your amp on early so the tubes warm up, and when to change your strings, and how to, get through when you don't know. Like, I just learned all this practical stuff, and we were in city after city, and I saw the country. That's when I really became a pirate. That's when that feeling of
Right.
flow that I learned with Josh, I was getting into flow more regularly, and I was meeting new people. I was a little shy. I mean, you remember me. I wasn't the coolest cat anyone ever met.
Right.
I was personable, but no one ever accused me of being cool in high school. And I never got that accusation. It was just, but I learned how to talk to people in city after city, and, stay up late and make new friends and put on records.
Right.
And then this sort of portal opened up, this magical portal. But then I got off the road, kind of got back into the mundane, still had to get my instrument together. And then the next really, I went to UMass Boston, and I took a semester again. This is the real turning point, because you'll see I was kind of I wouldn't call myself a fuck up, and you can bleep that out, but I was clearly wandering, and I had this professor, and after one semester at UMass, I said, Dr. Patterson, I just want to let you know I won't be back next semester. He said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if I'm built for school. I keep having a hard time with it." And he said, "Well, what did you say when you started? What was your intention?" I was like, "Well, I figured I'd get my degree." He says to me, he was this slightly older gentleman, gray with a seersucker coat. He said, "How do you look at yourself in the mirror, saying one thing and doing another? Why don't you stop muddying the waters, Mr. Sumber? I will see you next semester." And he walked away.
My God. Dude. My God.
It was, he bitch slapped me. It was the greatest bitch slap of my
That's like
life.
beyond bitch slap. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. He ended up being my senior advisor, my honors advisor. I got he ended up, I saw him less than a year ago. I think I don't, wouldn't guess I think he's in his 80s. I still go visit him. He changed my life. He's like my heart. There was all this sort of energy and inspiration and flow. And then he was just like smack, that yang, that like there's the yin yang. And I was so diffused and energetic, and everything was pure potential. And then he was like, "Cut the bullshit and do something, asshole. Let's go, get it together." So there's these two sides of the same coin, right? And I have manifested a lot, and I believe in manifestation, but I've also busted my ass. And so
Right.
there's this sweet spot between busting your ass and then also just allowing and being
Mm.
detached. There's this, take it easy, but take it energy. And so he was the but take it. Like, come on, get your shit together, Dan.
Incredible.
It was neat. Yeah.
And so you pick yourself up off the ground
Yeah.
with the spatula.
Yeah.
After that, I don't think I've ever heard such incredible direct, like, I'm going to hit you in the forehead with a Louisville Slugger feedback. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. Hasn't happened before or since. It was the most blunt.
And you could have taken it, you could have been like, the heck with this
F
guy.
that guy.
I'm out of here.
Yeah,
Like,
who talks? No one
like, I
talks
don't
to
want to.
baby. No one puts baby in a corner.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he was absolutely right. He was so correct. It was such an awakening and a kick from within. It was, even though it was outward, it was just like, oh, like
Yeah.
there was nothing to refute. There was nothing. It was so loving. It was such a loving slap.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough love.
Oh
Real tough
yeah,
love.
it was
Like,
great. I'm thinking about it now, very moved, like really.
dude, I'm moved by it. And I wasn't even in the room. And how many years ago was this?
That
That's
would have
some
been
incredible feedback.
probably 1998, 1999. And the next cool thing after that was actually being a street musician. Then I met the drummer from Porter Davis. And another cool thing was, on this sort of will, this sort of, a lot of what's interesting about creating is this balance between surrender and will, right? If it's all surrender, you're just being blown in the wind. If it's all will, you're not allowing inspiration. And I remember reading an interview with Bob Dylan, who's one of my heroes, and was talking about how he either I dreamed this or he was recounting a dream, but it was something like they said, well, he said, I can't really write songs like I did when I was younger. Like those type of songs don't come to me anymore. He said, I had to
Mm,
learn how to write songs.
mm,
And it's something about like he had this dream where he said, I'm determined to stand whether God delivers me or not. It was what the dream said to Bob in his sleep or his lucid dream. And I realized like, oh shit, if Bob Dylan has to work for it now, then I better shut the fuck up and get to work. So it was again this mixture of pure listening to inspiration, but then also being ready to apply profound willpower as is necessary. And it's a dance between inspiration and perspiration. And so I was like, I got
mm.
to start to continue to learn the craft and write as many songs as I could and try everything. Became this. That's when I really started to fall in love or make myself fall in love with learning how to do this as a lifelong process. I was like, if Bob doesn't get a pass, then Dan Sumber, or whatever his name is, doesn't get a pass
I love it though. It's like no matter what your name is, you don't get a pass when it comes to that creative process.
by any name.
So yeah, so you go back the next semester, you get your degree, and you mentioned that you met the drummer of Porter Davis, which has become pretty much like your long time, like the anchor. It seems like
Yeah,
over the course of your music career.
Mike's unbelievable. And Mike was again, he was the perfect 100% blend of will and surrender. It was
Mm,
unbelievable. He says like there is no B plan. I will either do this out of sleeping in a station wagon, or I'll do this touring in a tour bus. It does not matter. There's no other plan for him. And I'm like, that's my guy. So we were just like, what do we do? We play. And we got we would play the subway from like 5 a.m. to like 8 a.m. for all these commuters. And we would fill up, at the time, email lists were a big deal, and we'd get emails and we'd get tips, and we'd sell some of the CDs, and we'd like, make a couple $100 and just be absolutely rich, and go eat great breakfast and divide up our $91 each and feel just like, I was also at that time, teaching elementary school music. And that was really, really cool. And I enjoyed that a lot in a
that's
Montessori
very
school.
cool.
And then we'd play gigs at night. So then I just became, I just lit on fire. I just was every waking second. That's when the sort of passion met the
Everything
will,
kind
met
of
the
yeah.
timing, met like it really, some momentum picked up then.
So talk about that time, right? What did busking teach you? I mean, that's pretty you gotta be brave, man. And it's not even like I'm surprised to hear you say 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. because that's probably the least brave time of day in order to get in front of people to perform, right? Like people are sipping their coffee, they're angry, their head down, they're running to their office job, and you're out there being creative trying to entertain them. What's that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I learned that nobody owes me shit. Nobody owes me shit, especially on their way to work at that time. So if you're either a bother, I remember one time, it's like creating value. One of my favorite stories about creating value was a guy comes over. We were playing in Davis Square Station, where the name of our group is Porter Davis, and this is Davis Square Station in Somerville, Massachusetts. Guy throws a 20 in the tip jar, and I just start like beaming, playing, kind of give him like like real cool, very satisfied, kind of like Mike, like clearly I'm the man. I told you. And we stopped the song, and I'm just like I'm like, hey man, thanks so much. He's like, no, thank you. There's a dude who plays the musical saw down here, and it's awful. Beating this. That's for beating the saw guy to the
Being
spot.
this song.
Like all we did was not be the saw guy. It wasn't, we created value, we showed up and we created value. So, but it also
Wow.
wasn't about me. And what I learned was from Mike, I had a lot of quit in me, and Mike didn't have as much quit. So I'd be like, this sucks. And he'd be like, keep
Yeah.
playing. So again, I had all these teachers, I had all these lessons. I still do all the time. That was something I've had to learn, that perseverance, the fighting spirit, I mean, you knew me when I was, younger. And again, like I was fine. I had great friends. It was a good childhood. But I didn't have a lot of fighting spirit. And
Hmm.
I learned my fighting spirit later in life through touring, through busking. I ended up getting into Krav Maga for a good while, and that learn I
That's
didn't know how
cool.
to throw a punch till I was in my late 20s, and that I the fighting spirit was something that blended well with all this kind of expansive loving spirit, you know? And so loving spirit alone, I guess for some people maybe they can do it that way, but I had to learn this sort of grounded, I take, like, I guess you call it healthy aggression, and that sort of marriage between that and these inspirational, because I still love both, but that the fighting spirit was something I had to adopt and learn.
Cultivate.
Yeah, I had to cultivate
Well,
that part.
I think it's Jordan Peterson talks about this, like be a lethal person, but then don't use it. But know that you can be lethal. I'm
Yes.
mangling
Yeah, no, I
the
know. Yeah, like a savagery, a little
quote,
bit.
but that's the sentiment. Yeah, like be a
Yeah.
total savage, but don't act on it. But know if you know that you are and that you can protect yourself and your family and whatever, it's a different world out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was not a savage when we first met.
You're lovely.
I was lovely, but to find your place in the world requires again that perfect balance, or the ever elusive balance between perspiration and inspiration. That's really just like
Right.
it's always sort of course correcting on those two poles.
Yeah. So then you're playing busking with Porter Davis. You're in Massachusetts. What makes you head down to Austin? You've been down in Austin for a while now.
Been down here, yeah, 20 years. You know, that again, that then it starts to be this sweet spot between, we knew we were going to work hard. We knew we were in it together. I now had somebody as focused and relentless as I was, maybe more so, definitely as much so. We were competitive with each other in a
Yeah.
way, which is like we weren't going to let the other person be more intent on our path. It was like we built this sort of nucleus of energy, and then Boston didn't feel like home, really. It felt like a great training ground, but I'm like, this doesn't feel. It's like being with being in a relationship with somebody that you know is a good person, but wasn't really your person. I'm like, this just
Yeah.
isn't it.
Yeah.
The
Good way of putting it. Yeah.
shows that I played with Hypnotic Clambake in Austin were transcendent. And then it's so funny how this chorus of Mike and I went down to Austin, and we had the sense that we might want to live there, spend a week there. Both got very interested in young ladies there. And
There's that pattern
there's
again.
that pattern again. It's so funny how that what draws you forward, right? How many things we
Yeah.
do sort of in
Yeah.
that elusive desire to connect. And so we made that decision to move down here, and that was one of the best decisions both of us ever made. Well, we've, as a band, we're still together 25 years later, and Mike is
So crazy.
crushing it. He's played with, he was Willie Nelson's drummer for a spell. He's played with some of the greatest artists of our generation. Been playing for a long time with a guy named Hayes Carl, who's an incredible singer-songwriter all over been Hayes was in a lot of episodes of Yellowstone, and they're really crushing it.
Oh,
His
I know
music was,
oh,
yeah.
exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fantastic. So Mike is,
Oh,
yes, that's really, that relationship and that clarity and that focus. Like we're working on a new album right now. Like, and we love creating together.
so let's talk about your producing chapter, right? And you've produced at like a ridiculously high level. How do you go from, all right, I'm moving down to Austin, I'm a performing musician, this is now my life, to producing and having a studio and eventually getting to the Ruthie Foster's Healing Time sessions and collaborating with all these incredible Austin musicians and all the accolades that come after that? Like, how did you always want to be a producer, or what's that genesis like? You get down to Austin, musician, now you're producing. What was the in between there?
I was gonna. There's a funny story. I think the word is ikigai. Have you heard that word?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a dude, that's so funny. This is happening on every one of the podcasts. That's
I was
you see that?
afraid that was, yeah, that's amazing. I was afraid that was the wrong word. There is a really
No,
funny
it's there. It's the right word. Yeah, that's nuts, dude. Keep going.
Well, Ariana Grande got a tattoo on her hand right when she had this song, I Get It, I Want It, all that, whatever that song is.
Yeah.
And she was blowing up and she went out and got a tattoo with her friends. Had this like rager of a weekend. And then her fans, I think in Japan, were like, why did she get the word small charcoal grill tattooed on her hand? Uh, and so I think she's had the tattoo corrected, but she definitely had small charcoal grill tattooed on her hand for a short time. So I was like,
You were worried you did the same thing with this.
did I just say, did I
Did I
just
just
say
small charcoal grill this?
telescope lens or something like that, or turtle shell? No, ikigai, I believe, is like sort of this, as I understand it, if I'm not destroying the concept, is sort of what you love to do and what the world needs, and it's this sort of
Yeah, yeah,
intersection between the two of those.
yeah.
And I had a dear friend, an unbelievable artist still to this day, Kristen Cifelli, great Italian songwriter
Yeah.
from New Jersey, and who was my girlfriend at the time, and just a dear friend and unbelievable singer, really one of the greatest singers I've ever heard still to this day in my life. Just somebody says it's like a hot rock wrapped in velvet is this person's voice. Yeah.
Ooh,
It was
wow.
really incredible. And, rest in peace, the singer of the band Boston, who sang like More Than a Feeling and all that stuff. I said, she had one of the greatest voices he had ever heard. I mean, she really was so good.
Wow.
And I was playing guitar with her and she generously let me do that. And that was when maybe like I was bumping up a little bit more and playing with some folks that had a little bit more going on. And I was being allowed to getting invited into circles that were just like a little bit more professional or professional leaning. People had some things going on and I was her full-time guitar player, and she got a little money from a family member to make her first album. And she said, I need a producer. And I said, I'll do it. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea. I said, I'll do it. And that was
Well,
slightly
I was gonna say,
delusional.
what do you think made you say, "I'll do it"? You just like you just knew her, obviously had affection for her, knew the
Worst,
voice was great, and you're like, "I know what to do here." Like, did you just
I don't know, man. The worst reading on it was like n- narcissistic delusion. It's the worst.
You're way too self-deprecating.
Well, that's the worst. But I don't think it was that in this case. Not that I've never suffered from that at all, but I think in this case I knew something. I just felt really clear. I said, I'll do it. And I didn't waver. And she said, okay. And then we did it and it was great. And I remember, it's funny, we just put together a great band. The bass player on that session went on to play in this band, Vertical Horizon. He's now John Mayer's a bass player. He's great.
Holy
Sean
moly.
Hurley, he played on those sessions. He was a kid like us. And then the drummer he's Amy Mann's drummer for a long time. And he's a genius, John Sands. And we did it with this guy, Chris Rival, who's a dear friend who I saw last summer. Just these guys all were a little bit ahead of us, but these were good songs and we were playing them sincerely. I learned how generous the musical community could be. Everybody just played their hearts out. And, sometimes I wouldn't know what I was doing. And Chris would be like, hey, you want to try to do this now? I'd be like, yeah, let's do this now, guys. But there was a lot of sincerity from Chris and I being young and these guys being generous and just loving music. And we just got through it. It got nominated for a Boston Music Award back in like 96, which was a
Wow.
huge deal to us because that was like, I don't know, it was like a citywide, we went to these awards, we got dressed up. It was like, oh my God, and it was the first thing I ever produced. And so it was
Crazy.
I loved doing it so much. It did well for her, for me. And I started to notice every time I produced as an artist, I was seeing these linear gains. Like I'd play, I'd get a little better. People were like, oh, you're gonna be pretty good. I was all right. It was good. I wasn't bad, but it was very linear. Like I worked this hard and I got about that much back and it was going like this. Whereas versus producing had a kind of a hockey stick energy. Every time I did it, it felt good. I seemed to be creating more value for people. Like I was doing it differently without realizing it. I was in the flow. I enjoyed it. Go back to this sensitivity. Like it's really about feeling and listening
Mhm.
and being extremely sensitive to what's happening, to how the artist is doing. That intense sensitivity that I had growing up really was at home there. It was like this, like, oh, I was like
Wow.
like a barometer for everything going on in the music. And it was like, and I kind of had moves that I didn't even know I had.
That's so
It was
cool.
great. So I kept noticing that kept going better than other things. And I kept doing both until this is a non-linear story, but when I met my wife, that was the second big slap in the face that I got, where she got me to really focus on producing, because
Yeah.
that was like clearly going better than other things. It was a funny story, but essentially I was like we were on one of our first dates, and I was like, oh, and then we went to Dallas. It was kind of a lame gig, came home with $36. I'm pissed. And she said, again, brand new dating relationship. She said, you sure do complain about music a lot. I was like, excuse me? And I was like, she's like, well, clearly you love it. Which part do you love? And I said, well, I do it all so I get to make records. And she said, well, is there a job where you get to just do that?
Yeah. So simple, right?
And I'm like, yeah, producer. She's like, well, why don't you stop going to Dallas for $36 and put your energy in that basket and see what happens? You're a smart guy. You'll probably figure it out. And I was like,
Boom.
oh God, that was the smartest thing anyone's ever said since Dr. Patterson. So that was quite a few years
Wow.
later. And I had enjoyed a lot of some pretty good performing success, but that was when it was really time, as I was getting a little older, rounding into my 30s, where I was like, okay, now it's time to really get some traction or some liftoff, however you look at it. And it took that kind of focus to really go up another level.
It's very cool you had these people in your life to have these sort of mini quantum shifts, right? Where it's kind of like, oh, wake up call. Oh, yeah. Okay. And it's almost them asking simple questions, right? How do you look in the mirror? Can you, make music and still pay the bills? Like, it's like super simple questions that just kind of like forehead slappers, right?
Usually when you're
Yeah.
in a pit for a while,
Yeah.
those moments really hit
Yeah,
when
man.
you wallowed a little, and then you're like really ready for that.
Dude, I mean, it's how this whole podcast came about. I got on a call with my buddy Mike Sprouse just for another topic, and he's like, "Oh, things seem to be going great. How you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing a lot of this and none of this." And he's like, "Well, what's this like for you?" And I told him. He's like, "Well, do more of that." Like, it's so simple,
Brilliant.
so silly.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous. It's like when it's embarrassing enough. It's like when it's really embarrassing, then you know it's good, right?
exactly. Yeah, music is like that a little bit.
Yeah,
When I
yeah,
write a song and it's a little embarrassing, or I do a performance or a vocal and I feel a little kind of exposed, a lot of
yeah.
time some good stuff is happening. I felt like that when I wrote the Remembering Process. I felt a little silly because
Oh man,
it was
the
a
perfect segue because I am like dying to get into this. I've got like a ridiculous amount of notes,
that's
and I'm gonna
awesome.
try not to like step on your toes with this one.
No, it's great.
So
Please.
you're in Austin. You meet your future wife. She says produce. You're producing music. If I'm following the timeline correctly, Joe Vitale of The Secret fame reaches out to you because he wants you to produce his album. Is this correct? Is that the
This is
genesis of this?
this is a this is a good one, Chris. So somewhere in the Porter Davis years, in the sort of when we're on our come up in Austin, which we did have a bit of a come up. We had some nice traction going on here. We had a nice record with a guy named Gerf Morlix who produced it that ended up getting played on the radio a little bit. We were touring. We were playing in Canada. We had some nice moments. But Mike, who is one of Mike is cool and always was cool. Mike's just cool, except for he's like really into like magic, which we just always thought was funny. Like Mike would be like, and you always think it's funny.
Least cool thing.
It's the least cool thing ever, but Mike's a cool guy, but he just like to do card tricks and stuff. So Mike says to us in the band, he said, I got a friend who's in the magic club. We're like, oh, that's cool, dude. You know, and he's got an event and he needs a band for it. Will you guys help me volunteer to play at it? It doesn't sound great, but what you got? It's like, well, it's a concert for dogs. And we were like, what, dude? And I wasn't smoking as much at that time, but I was like, excuse me, what? He's like, yeah, it's a concert for dogs. I don't know. It's like a publicity stunt. He wrote a book about P.T. Barnum called There's a Customer Born Every Minute. And he's like a famous marketer. And he goes by the name Mr. Fire. And he's doing this event and he's calling the news out. And he needs a band to pretend to play to dogs. We're going to play our music, and then they're going to cut the sound, and it's going to be that only the dogs can hear it. And it's this.
It's so good. It's funny. It's like, I know the story from the book, but it's so funny hearing you say it. It's ridiculous.
It's funny because it's true, and there's pictures of it, and there's a picture of like
but no recordings of it, right?
yeah, and there's protesting, and the news came out. There was a mermaid, and I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on, and we were just. It was like Tuesday, and I was like, sure, fine, it's fine, whatever. So we did this thing, and it was funny. And one of the things that was cool about this band too is that once we signed up, we were all in. You know, we had our.
It sounds like you guys didn't take yourselves too seriously. It's like, yeah, it sounds fun.
We did and we didn't.
Fun.
You know, it was like we took what we were trying to do seriously, but we had fun. We were having a great experience, and in general, whether we were playing on the street or we were touring around the country or we were playing for a concert for dogs, there was some sense that we were having the experience of a lifetime. And when I look back, I cannot believe what we experienced. I mean, it was just like it was abnormal, I think. So we just, you know, you'd wake up in some random city. It was so good. So we do this concert for dogs. It was fine. It was fun. I didn't think much of it. And about a year or two later, this book called The Secret comes out, and my father sent it to me, and I watch it, and I'm like, holy shit, that's the concert for dogs guy.
Yeah.
What the hell? That was crazy. I'm like, that's the same dude.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was the timeline. I didn't realize that it had happened before his fame from The Secret.
He was like
that's cool
advertising dude who was writing a book about P.T. Barnum. The Secret did not exist. It may have been being done. He may have been filming it around then, but didn't know him before. I didn't know him till I had literally put on this DVD that my dad kindly sent me. And then I was like, oh, and that was a big change. That's when it was The Secret. Like so many people, that's when so many of these ideas was offered to me. I was like, holy, and I knew a guy in it. That was crazy. And I had this sense of like, man, I wish I could talk to him, but I'm like, this book and movie is having a moment, and this guy's not going to want to talk to me right now. Like he's having his moment. Right. I just never, I was like, I don't know. One day I'll, and then years later, probably 3-4 years later, when I met my wife, we had this aha moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to be a producer. Like I love it. I'm better at it than other things. This is why I do it. So I'm going all in, but I had a little bit going on locally, but I'm like, how does one become national? That was my word. I was like, how does one become national? I don't know anybody who is national, or I don't have any friends. I was like, the only person I know is the dog guy. I sent him an email. I got his email, and that's an interesting thing is, there's a book called Never Wrestle with a Pig. You know that book? It's a great book about.
That's a great title.
It's fantastic. Never Wrestle with a Pig. It's kind of like what they don't teach you at Harvard Business School. It's the sort of unwritten laws of business. And I think I had read that book, or maybe it was afterwards that I put it together, but I had done a favor for this guy. So I wasn't saying, hey, I'm random. I was like, you know, I wasn't saying, hey, you go do something for me because I did something, but like, hey, I'm that guy that did that crazy thing for you for free in the middle of the heat in Texas when you needed to promote your book. I said it very subtly, but it was this idea that
it's like a reminder.
When you're perceived as a giver and when you are a giver, the world opens up for you differently. And that's just the law of reciprocal. I don't know, there's some cool word for it, but like you're not doing it.
It's Robert Cialdini. Yeah. The law of reciprocity.
Yeah, you're not doing it to get something back, but you know that good things happen to people who do good things for people. Like and if you believe that, like life, it's really fun, and you're not doing something expecting an immediate return. You just put good energy out into the world and trust that it may come back having nothing to do with this. But in his case, I said, could I have lunch with you and just talk to you about this new idea for a studio that I have? And I made this studio, and I remember driving down to meet him in this town called Wimberley, this beautiful town near Austin that he lived in. It's like gorgeous town. And I remember driving there, and I had this little prayer in my head, and I said, again, thinking about reciprocal value and reciprocation, that God, if there's anything in my heart, I'm going down for help. I need help. I want help. But if I have anything in my heart that can help this guy, please make sure it comes out. Like I want relationships and friendships and conversations that really feel mutual and have reciprocal value. I'm not just trying to take, you know.
I love so really, like, you really had that thought going down,
100%.
like,
I
you
know
were just
exactly
kinda
where I
like,
was on the road.
"Wow, wow." I love that, Dan. That's so smart, but that's smart, that's like high EQ. That's like EQ and IQ.
It feels better.
It's a level of intelligence that if everybody went into meetings that way, the world would be a better place,
Oh
you
my
know?
god, yeah, and, like, and
Yeah.
it could be anything, I remember I had this recording session with a drummer that I really didn't wanna do this recording session for various reasons, like, he wasn't the drummer I wanted on it, but I had to have him on it because the artist insisted on it, so I was real pissy about it, and this dude came in and crushed it, by the way, incredible drummer, but he also, like, helped me. We just had this nice chat, having coffee on the porch at my studio, and he, like, basically healed my, kid's sleep problem. My we were going crazy at the time. My kid wouldn't sleep. He's like, "Oh, this is what my wife and I we tried it, and my kid slept." So it's so funny how you don't know where it's coming from if you're open. So I was driving down to this to really try to get advice on how to raise the energy and the vibration and my notoriety as a producer. I
Yeah,
got
how do I go national?
how do I go
Right, yeah,
national?
yeah.
And I explained to him my plan. I explained to him my studio. I explained to him this whole thing, and he listened patiently. And he said, "I've been waiting my whole life for this studio. This is how I want to. I've been wanting to make music for like 20 years or longer. When can I sign up?"
Come on.
He wrote me a check, and I bought my wife's engagement ring with that check. That was like the biggest check
Come
anyone had ever written me. I
on!
swear, as God is my witness, it was. I was on the path, and the path was opening to me in magical ways. I was like, I couldn't. I'm like, how is this happening?
Dude, that's goosebumps.
And yeah,
That's
he went on
real.
to write. He did 5 albums with me, so he was like almost like a patron of my studio. We did 5 music albums. Joe Vitale's music albums I love. Brought in incredible musicians, a great and other one of the best drummers in the world, who's also named Joe Vitale, which is a whole other story. So
You got a lot of paisans in your
I
life
got a lot
there.
of paisans. I love the paisans.
Oh, well, we should add, well, real quickly to interrupt, is that when we were younger, I don't know if you remember this,
Yes,
but I made you an honorary Italian guy by naming you Dan Sambarini, and you
yes,
made me an honorary Jewish guy by naming me Chris Desowitz. So for the
yes.
audience out there, keep going now.
Lots
But
of
I just had
food,
to get
lots
that
of
one in there.
guilt, some schnozzolas. We had the
Oi,
yes.
oi.
Oi, the guilt. Oi, the schnoz. It was incredible. That's son. You son of a mayapek.
Yeah.
So yeah, Joe, and then the first real national thing I did was that Joe and I ended up co-authoring the book The Remembering Process, which came out on Hay House, which is this great publishing company, which was
The
also
publishing
magical.
company. Yeah.
But what's interesting, the contrast.
And that's the book for anybody that wants to pick it up. I will
Please do,
absolutely link
yeah.
to
It's
it.
it was
Yeah.
such a
Keep,
such a joy.
yeah.
Going back to you're helping me realize just how little glory any of there was earlier in this in the conversation. Like there was just that bit of faith in the vision, that bit of faith in these little glimpses of something better where, if for anybody who's in this place where it's really unremarkable or even worse, but there are these moments, these breadcrumbs that the universe gives you or God gives you or your psyche gives you, however you're looking at it, where you're like moments of hope, moments of inspiration. You got to hold on to those for dear life and let them take you, because man, I mean, there were years where I didn't have jack or shit going on.
Yeah.
And I'm really feeling the contrast in that. Thank you for bringing me back to that.
I mean, I didn't realize the genesis of the whole book, and I'm thrilled that you share that because I do think it's a really great lesson for anyone that when they're perhaps inquiring with someone that they need help from, to like get their mindset straight and be like, let me bring something to the table for them as well. And then that's when real magic happens, when human helping human. So you get there, you tell them about the studio, and you start essentially discussing the remembering process. Was this something, how did you come up with this? Did you even call it the remembering process, or was it just a tool that you would use? Okay, so you're just in the studio with musicians and it bubbled up. Why?
Great
Explain that.
question. What my methodology was in terms of, and still is in terms of producing, is I take a long time to make a record. For me, it is a relational model. It's who we're being together, not what we're doing together. It is the trust that, you and I have in the studio, where I'm not just trying to throw you in. We will meet for months, sometimes a year, before I'll record with anybody. My hero, Rick Rubin, had this thing called the recording studios for recording.
Mm.
The recording studio is not necessarily for writing. Some people use it for that. But in my model, we meet elsewhere or in the other room. We get to know each other. We get to know your music. We get clear on what we're trying to say. We get clear because there's so much, and there's so much adrenaline sometimes when it comes to the recording process. So I would spend all this time with Joe, which was unbelievable, because here I am with one of my, become like a mentor and a hero, meeting with Joe twice a week for, like getting to hang out with a real life wizard. It was just taking
Yeah.
my whole life to the next level, and just a joy to be around, and every bit as generous and just fun and interesting as you'd hope a guy like that would be. Just a dear human still. We texted this morning. I said, "Hey, I'm going on podcast to talk about the remembering process." And he texted me back. He said, "I remember it was fan-fickin-tastic," is what he wrote.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we're but he hadn't written that many songs. He'd written, I don't know, like 40 books or something like that, but he hadn't written many songs. And he's like, I'm trying to write these songs. I was like, Joe, don't write the song. Remember the song. Because I had a couple of songs, one in particular that really still is kind of like my best song, and I wrote it probably 25 years ago. And I just sort of remembered it. It just kind of came out. I've written a bunch of songs. I've tried really hard, and they've been pretty good. That's actually kind of a great song. And I can only say that because it's one of the only ones that are like it that I've done. It came out in 15 minutes. It was like a burp.
Crazy.
It was like a divine burp from the universe. And I just happened
There's the
to,
self-deprecation again. My best song was a burp.
the universe crop dusted me gold. And, uh, in the aisles of CVS, and it was brilliant. And
So good.
it was so good. But I remembered it. I remembered it whole, and that was
You're kidding.
no,
Just
no.
like a
It was just like I remember that song, and then I was like, oh. And a lot of the great songwriters. Now, some people have done that a bunch. For me, and I think it really just happened once or twice. Once for sure, a couple of times, parts of songs where it felt more like received, transmitted, as opposed to written. And, kind of like those Bob Dylan songs before he had to learn how to write songs. He was,
I was gonna say, you said Dylan is your hero, and that's the way he would talk about it, right?
yeah, I got one like that. And that song actually carried me forward too, because again, I was like, well, somewhere in me, I'm capable of this.
Mm.
If that exists, I guess I'm on the right path. I don't know. I just was like, I can't stop now, because that was like another one of these breadcrumbs. We're condensing it, but these breadcrumbs would come once in a year, once, twice in a year. I mean, they're very intermittent. And so again, my hope is if somebody's still with me and they're on a path for themselves, that they're just taking in sheer belief and hope that if you've been given the desire, it's not some kind of cruel joke there to taunt you. It's
I
not.
love that.
I think
Yeah.
that God or the guides, or however you want to see it, is there to taunt us. So if we get these glimpses of hope, that we hold fast to them and we believe in them, and we amplify them, because they're not there just to torture us. So I didn't get this song Carter's Tune just to torture me. It was like, no, it's to inspire me. It's like, okay, you did this, and they may not all
Yeah.
come that way. So anyway, I said to Joe,
But basically, like, the information, you're like, "Oh, I do have that in me."
yeah, or I
Do
can
have that
receive it,
ability.
or however this goes.
Right.
My best, and sometimes when I'd have part of a song, I'd try to remember the song as finished, and drive, like as if I was driving and listening to it on the radio. So I'm driving. So it's like, if you're writing a book, you just like you imagine yourself driving and listening, hearing yourself on the audio book out of your out of whatever it is, CarPlay. So I said to Joe back in the day, don't write these songs, remember them.
Mm.
And he said, okay. I get a text from him that night, and he didn't text or an email. He says, "Who taught you about that remembering thing?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. It's just how it's kind of how I fumble my way into learning how to write. It felt more natural to do it that way. I wasn't trying as hard." And he said, "That should be a book." And then I met with him the next time, and he said, "No, I'm serious. You need to write that book." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not an author. Will you write it with me?" He goes, "Yeah."
It's just so nuts,
And I'm
man. It's
like,
just so
"Did you
nuts.
just agree to write a book with?" Okay, I'm like, okay. This is another chills moment. I learned from Joe that when you say you're gonna do something, you do it. And that's because what you say, the universe is listening, and it's listening to whether you follow through or not. Like that's what Dr. Patterson was telling me years earlier, stop muddying the
Right,
waters. I'll
right.
see you next semester. What did you say when you started? We said we were going to write this book, but honestly, I had a lot to write. Joe had written a lot of books, and he had some stuff already banked. He had some other stuff we were mixing his writing and mine. And if you read the book, you can see kind of these where it goes in and out of that. And for me, it was just really difficult. I hadn't written a book. It's really hard for me. It was at the time. I remember having to finish it, and I said I was going to have it done by New Year's of that year. And I was away I went away with, I think maybe before we were even married, but I was with Andrea, maybe engaged, and we went down to near Marfa. We were in Marathon, Texas at this nice hotel, and I was sitting there in the room or out by the pool or whatever we were doing. And I said I would finish this book, and I will finish this book. And it wasn't the final draft of it, but I gave my word. And that was that bit of, I had the inspiration. Joe Vitale now is like writing a book with me, but like, here's the perspiration. Finish that
Mhm.
book, motherfucker. Like that is, sorry for
Yeah,
if
yeah.
people have delicate ears, but that's how we talk in MedPac.
Yeah, just
Yeah, that's how we communicate.
yeah.
Well, and our moms did raise us better. We're trying every day.
I know, we're
We're
trying.
trying every day to be a little better.
It's funny, I went back once to speak at the Mahopac Chamber of Commerce at the library, and old teacher who I loved and admired and respected, Dr. Levy, was there with his wife, and he came up
Yeah.
after me, after I spoke, and I thought he was just gonna be like, "Great job, Chris," and he just goes, "You have to stop with the language." I was like, "Sorry."
His daughter was my first girlfriend when we were in
Oh,
second
there
grade,
you
Lisa
go.
Ann Levy. Hi,
Shout out
Lisa. We
Lisa
have
Levy.
second grade. So and
That's
Dr.
so good.
Max was a sweetheart. Yeah, respect to the Levies, very sweet people and neighbors and
Yeah,
real
yeah.
dear friends of ours. So yeah, I
So
can
good.
totally see Max
Yeah.
Levy saying it to you that way.
I was like, "Oh."
Real kind folk. But what happened next was Joe sent it out, or we just, that was it. We got it to him. I another law that's really important to me is the law of detachment. This,
Mhm,
again, it's perspiration and inspiration. There's intensity and divine willpower, but then there's also letting go. You got to let go. There's this paradox between intense intention, and then also you got to let shit breathe. You got to let stuff, you got to let the universe do its thing some. You can't
well,
squeeze it.
so I mean, look, I think that's a really interesting point because, like, I'm like thumbing through as you're talking, and I apologize. I don't mean to be rude, but
Great.
it's like I was riveted by the book. I really
Is
was.
that
It's
that's
so
so
impressed.
rude. It's so rude to say you're riveted. How could you?
But I did. But like, there was something going through the remembering process and trying to do that myself. Like, I felt my body change. Like, it felt different in my body, my breath, my shoulders. Like, it definitely cleared out some junk while I was going through it. And you kept bringing up, which I thought was really interesting, the idea of play
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and the concept of, and I got me back to this one spot where you wrote, Albert Einstein said your imagination is your preview of life's coming attractions. And it's kind of anchored in that, right? Can you talk a little bit about that, like the aspect of play and why this is such a fun thing to do?
Absolutely. I have been singing a lot lately again. I've been making, again, like a big teenager. I'm in 3 bands at 50, which
Nice.
I'm always joking, like, don't tell my wife that I'm in 3 bands. She thinks I'm only in 2. It's like this, I'm like looking out there. I'm like, I'm in 3 bands. They're not all like, some of them are recording projects that are a little nonlinear in how so it's not too bad. But
Right, right.
uh, but I've been singing more. I sing in 2 of them,
That's
and
cool.
what I've learned lately about singing from a great, from a teacher that I've been working with on singing is that I sing as characters now. I don't sing all the songs as Dan Barrett or Dan Sumber singing about his life. If I sing a song, even if I wrote it or whether it's a cover, I find these characters to play like a kid playing pretend. Because oh,
I
you felt
love
that?
that.
Yeah, it's there's first of all, the older you get, you say I'm self-deprecating, but I again, you gotta try. I have to try to be over myself, like not take myself too
Oh, yeah,
seriously or
totally,
be too
totally.
self-cherishing, because you know what, the world will kick your D in the
Yeah,
dirt
yeah,
if you're strutting a little.
yeah.
But this idea that I love to sing, and when I find these characters, I'm like, I talked about those great woods in Mayapack, and we'd play Army Man, we'd play Ancient Knights, real cool, really cool guys, a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of campaigns to go fight ogres and orcs, stuff that like the girls were way into.
The stuff the chicks really, really dug, yeah.
Save some for the rest of us, Dan. You know, save some female attention for the rest of us, Dan. Really just crushing it. And but it was so fun. We were just in a state of play,
Yeah.
man. We were just so free, and it's this relaxing in the pressure. When I sing as me, I'm really putting all the things I think are hopes, dreams, and fears on the line for other people to evaluate, or even worse, for my own superego, my own inner judge to evaluate. But if I create a character that's like, I'm singing a song called Willin' by Little Feat, and I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari. If I sing it as Dan Barrett, I'm like, well, what do I know about trucking? But if I start feeling like this trucker who misses his family, but is, a little too
They
sheets to the wind and drinking while he's driving, and maybe he's hauling some things that he shouldn't be hauling, and I start getting lost in this character, I'm in this state of play, and I can lose myself a little bit, but then it's that detachment that allows things to breathe, allows other parts of my spirit, of my brain, of my subconscious. And if I'm in a state of play, my body feels safe, like I'm everything's okay. So it's not the clearest answer, but it's a felt
No,
answer.
I love that, man. That's so good. That's so good.
You feel that breath, you feel that sort of like, I can inhabit a different part of myself that isn't so striving, isn't really based in fear, isn't really, I want this thing, but really I'm just afraid of not having it. And that's what's driving me. That's the bullshit.
That's profound. The fear of not having is like, oh,
That's not great fuel. That'll get you, that'll steer you out of the way of oncoming traffic, or if you forget to pay a bill and you got to run home and get it so they don't shut off your internet because you accidentally forgot. Like, that's good to have a little bit of adrenaline, a little cortisol, but man, cortisol's she's a cruel mistress if you live on
wreak
her.
havoc on your
Yeah,
body.
it's
Yeah.
terrible. It doesn't really last very long. You don't do your best thinking from that place.
So it's such an elegant solution. And I think I'm going to go another
Please,
Einstein
yeah,
quote
it's great.
in here where he said, Einstein said it simply, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion, even if a stubborn one. So I think you very elegantly have allowed for people that are practicing the remembering process to sort of get out of their own way, I guess. And I'm curious, when you have to explain this in everyday life to people, how do you explain it like in the most layman's terms? Like, and especially for skeptics, right?
Yeah.
Like people that are like, oh, that's just wishful thinking. You're pretend, like, how do you overcome the that guy or gal in the room that's just like, that's woo woo bullshit.
What I love about it is it works on every level. So I'll start with how I am so woo-woo that
Yeah,
I
me too.
actually truly wholeheartedly believe that we are affecting our outcomes by like touching the time-space continuum in a way that we were not previously. Like, I think we are literally altering reality. and
I
aligning
agree.
with a different reality. So like that's how far I can take it. But if I can go to the most staunch skeptic, and I hope they're from Mayapag, you're like, this guy's full of shit.
This fucking guy over here.
I thought he was full of shit then, and it's even more now. He's full of more. So like, God bless,
I should have kicked his ass in 8th grade, this pussy.
now try. I dare you. No, just kidding. I dare you. But
yeah, the Krav Maga will come out.
I'm telling you,
rip that guy's head off.
please. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on.
So no, to the most skeptical person, we can start with some very basic concepts like, do you believe in reverse engineering?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start there. How many engineers start with the end in mind and work back steps? Well, you can use it that concretely, like, well, this is where I want to be, and these are some of the things that I would have to do to get there. So reverse engineer, man. That's like that simple. You don't have to go full woo-woo. Always never go full woo-woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
I was going to say, you can't go full.
You can't go full woo-woo.
You're never going to win that Oscar. You can't go full woo.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Got me. No, I can't ask the question. That was a very good reference.
This is us in 7th grade biology, by the way. Christopher and Daniel, if you have a conversation, you feel free to take it outside the biology room.
So good. So good. All right. So I don't remember, what was I going to ask? So this I found interesting, and it connects with this that I had underlined a couple of times in the book. On page 38, you talk about the upper limit problem.
Yeah.
Where Gary Hendricks describes it as the following. The upper limit problem is the human tendency to put the brakes on our positive energy when we're exceeding our unconscious thermostat setting on how good we can feel, how successful we can be, and how much love we can feel. The essential move we all need to master is learning to handle more positive energy, success, and love. And what I found really interesting about what you're saying right now, when you think about the reverse engineering, your process, the remembering process, forces you to get clear on what you want and what pushing that upper limit is. Because if you're not clear on what that is, you can't go through that reverse engineering remembering process. So when you do it, it sounds woo-woo, but it's really tactical almost.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
If you talk to, for some reason, that skeptic in my head's name is Rocco. If you're telling Rocco, I mean, like, Rocco, I hear your skepticism.
Sounds right.
But would you agree then, that the best way to get what you want is to know what you want?
Yeah.
You got to know what you want. So if you've only just defined your target, you're ahead of so many people. So you can't forget, I mean, if it's like anything, having a clear target is essential for a flow state. So if that's the only step you do is really get clear about where you want to be, what's beginning with the end in mind, that's fine. And then you move up states of feeling like Neville Goddard and these other teachers where you start accepting that if you can adopt the feeling. The other day, I have these, you asked me another question too that I'm going to try to circle back to, but this feeling, I divide my goals still. I'm always going forward across body being balanced in business. A guy named Garrett J. White, I saw some things that he did, and that taught me body, of course, body goals. You got to take care of this vessel. Being is my spirituality, and a lot of that for me is the music. Body being balance, my family, my wife and kids are my priority, and business is, just gotta have that together. I was kind of, before I go to sleep or when I wake up, I was imagining floating in a pool with my more grown kids, remembering that and smelling the chlorine in my sense memories, bringing in sense memories of the chlorine of the pool. To kind of, I was just literally in bed, but to bring in, to feel into that, what Neville Goddard called the imaginal reality is, so you can start with just mentally having a clear target. But if you can start incorporating your senses and then with the remembering process, getting all the way to where you essentially either remember it as having happened or you are as close as you could possibly be to it almost being as though it happened. And when you do that, if something happened, if I said, remember that day you had that podcast with your old buddy Dan, you don't have to stretch to remember that, do you? It's like, oh yeah, I remember that so well. well, you're just all of those resistances go down. It's like you're all that fear of like, well, what if I can't? There's so much energy with your
Yeah.
brain trying to keep you safe.
Chirping
But
in
what if
your
I
ear.
can't? What if I
Yeah.
fail? It's that we're really getting around. That really, it's I don't claim to understand that wiring, but it's trying to keep you safe in some ass backwards way.
I love that. I love it. And I think, and I'm turning to this other step because I felt like this was something that would alleviate any concern of some of the skeptics, where you talk about the different steps in the remembering process. But, and I want you to describe this. I'm not going to read this, but you say collect the wisps.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, the wisps, that's so funny. I remember that word. When I say wisps, is that sometimes people are looking to get hit over the head with
Right.
inspiration, and they're waiting for that like anvil in the Bugs Bunny. And I don't want any anvils. I sometimes it's really an oblique. It's a strategy which I get from Brian Eno, all these teachers that I've had. When I say it's oblique, it's like, if you ever came up on a skittish cat or dog and you go right at it, they're kind of like, whoa, you know? You kind of have to go alongside it and put your hand down and let them. And sometimes our destiny does not want to be pursued. I mean, Sean Coleman said, I kill dreams in the chase. If we chase them too overtly and too abruptly, there's sort of there's this tightening or resistance that,
Yeah.
there are certain molecules that when we bring our attention to them, they actually change, they move, and they've been, and again, my physics, I think we were in physics together too. I wasn't very good at that,
Yep.
but so
Yep.
my physics background falls apart, but I know enough to know that there are certain people, places, things, goals, and molecules that when we apply too much direct force or attention to, have a way of scattering,
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
on us. But if we relax ourselves and become a magnet for them, these sort of looser, lighter energy, our brains, I play armchair scientist, and I do know that we crave things like dopamine, we're learning a lot about. So we want these big hits of like, but this baseline magnetic feeling is like it's more about presence and being, and it's a more subtle, kind of
Yeah.
quieter, silkier feeling.
I find it fascinating though. I feel like you just intrinsically, like, you followed your instinct, and scientists are proving this in the lab now. One of my next guests is a gentleman by the name of Thomas Campbell, and he wrote 2 books, maybe more than 2 books, but the 2 that I have are called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. And he's a
Oh wow.
physicist, and he didn't realize that he was going to get to this woo-woo place by being a physicist, like following the scientific method. But his books are fascinating because basically he's, through scientific method, proving everything that you just talked about. Like, that's the way it works. That's the way the universe works. That's the way our manifestation works. That's the way our brains work, our souls work. And just think it's the coolest stuff ever. And I think, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about like Rubicon and how like mentorship and, you're working with these different artists. And then I noticed in the book, which kind of blew my mind, Dan, where you talk about like like winning a Grammy in the book. This was way, 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 way before you got the Grammy nomination.
Hmm.
Am I correct?
Oh yeah, like more than a decade.
And for anybody that's watching or listening, in the book, The Remembering Process, Dan talks about remembering winning a Grammy. I started crying, dude. Like, it's getting me emotional now. Like, I
Thank you.
think that's fucking nuts, man. Like, what the fuck?
I know. I know this shit works, man. I don't know what to say. Look, I got the goosebumps. Like you can see it on the
Yeah, yeah.
thing. It sounds like they just went even higher. Like it's not a parlor trick. I don't, what's most important was just how far from some of these principles I was, and just being fortunate enough to fail forward so much. But what happened was even weirder because again, I listened to myself, and I had my first child, my wife, we had our kid, Henry, and I got burnt out on doing music for a living. I was getting
Mm,
into that sort of trying, frustrated cortisol state a lot in music. And I needed to let it rest. So I opened up this construction base, this flooring company here that I still have. And I really set it down for the first time in like 25 years. I set music down. I was just picking around at home a little bit. And then I spoke to a friend who also happens to be sort of like a channel, which is a whole thing. Like this person channel, like just she just has this incredible intuitive gift beyond I think anyone I've ever met. And it was right around one of my birthdays, probably around 2020 or 2021. She said, "You need to get all your music stuff out." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's in storage." She said, "I know, music's coming back." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Music's coming back." She said, "Oh, it's coming back big." And I'm like, "Really? Okay, whatever that means." So I started to I listened, it felt right. I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And I was doing a lot of flooring, doing a lot of stuff, and then my dear friend, but I didn't have as much music going on, hadn't produced an album in years. And then my dear friend Ruthie, who I'd worked with, Ruthie Foster, unbelievable Grammy winning blues legend, said, "Hey, I need some help with this album. Will you produce it?" So, of course, absolutely. And at that point, I had no push or try. It was all for love. It was spirituality for me. I was like, sure, this music is needed. And like my attention and my care is needed, and I have it to give. And so, of course, like it was a no brainer. It was just such a sweet yes. Absolutely. When do we start? We got going. And that is the one that got the Grammy nom, and we went to the Grammys. It was unbelievable, got the tux going, and
All
it
right,
was
I
just
want I want details. I want you to walk me through that. Like, you got the tux, you're at the fucking Grammys,
yeah, it was incredible.
like little Dan Sumber
Little Dan
from Mayapack,
Sammarini,
New York,
yeah,
gone through all these trials and tribulations.
yeah.
You're there. What do you like? Are you just like, is it like a dream? Is it just like, oh, it's everything I expected it to be? Is it different? Like, walk us through that.
It was beautiful. It felt so good. What's interesting now is thanks to that law of detachment. I think if it had happened younger, I would have been a little too heady about it. But I was
Ah,
able to just. It
interesting.
was somebody once told me like, don't let the wine sour in your mouth. You take that swig. I had other things in my life that were lesser, but I would just like kind of hold on to it. Like, look at me, aren't I a big shit? And so
Yeah.
I took it like a swig and enjoyed every bit of it and then moved on with my life. And I'm in because what I realized what I love to do is I love to make music and I love to serve. So I would like to go back and win one for the fun of it, but going to the Grammys is still not as fun as making music. And I loved it.
Mhm.
Making music is that is pure presence or it's equally as fun. It's just a different aspect, but I did not place it above being present with people I care about creating. It was just that we created fun, we got dressed up, saw all kinds of interesting people. It was like funny just to see like, Mark, that's Jay-Z like in the same room as me. And like there's Beyonce. I think
You're like, oh, and I'm not going to get kicked out. I actually belong in this room with Jay-Z.
it was so amazing.
That's crazy.
It was really wonderful, but there was a lightness to it that I'm grateful that I was at this stage of my life that I could enjoy every bit of it and then also not let it define me. So it's like a sweet flavor to life. It was like an Easter egg for this, you know, Jewish kid.
An
An
Easter
Easter
egg
egg.
for the
Yeah.
Jewish boy,
Yeah.
which I love, and I'm sitting here trying to flip through this, but and I know somewhere in here it has the details of the Grammy, but
I'll
I
tell you one
did
thing
find it.
I did have for my screensaver for about 10 years straight was I had a picture of a Grammy and it was a tiling screensaver and I had two big screens in the studio. And every time the computer would go to sleep, Grammys would stack
I
on my
love it.
screen. That reticular activation, that having pictures up of what you want, those
Yeah, it works.
I love a vision board. Having that, look up reticular activation if you don't know what that is, but basically letting your eyes and your brain program what it is you see, what it is you want. That's back to Rocco, who I love. Rocco and I could hang now. There is no Rocco, everybody, but there's lots of Roccos, You know, if
There is
you're
a
not
Mayapack guy, Al Rocco, who I love dearly. Great
I
guy.
didn't
Al
know Al,
Rocco.
but hey Al, how you doing, buddy? Knowing what you want. The best way to get what you want is to know what you want. So if you don't want to go on some of this other woo-woo, at least get clear about what it is that your goal is. What do you seek? What do you want? What makes you feel good? And go for it.
You're a special motherfucker. And I think I'm still having trouble. Like, you're being able to write about the Grammy in that book and have the nomination become a reality. I think it's beautiful, honestly. And I think I'm honored to call you a friend, dude. Honestly, I think what you're doing and the things that you put out there are wonderful and are changing people's lives for the better. I'm going to put a link to this book because I think everybody needs to read the book. I think for myself and what I'm going through selfishly, like, your book has helped me. And, I know BS when I see it, and there's no BS involved in the book. It might feel weird. And it's almost like the only way I can describe reading the book is kind of like trying to write left-handed, because you kind of have to like go there a little bit. And I think people might wrestle with that, but once they get it, it
It's
really
play.
is,
If
it's
BS, if
play.
play is BS, I'll BS all day long. It's play, and
Yeah.
there's play has edges into reality, but you can get a little lost and enjoy. So it's playful. Don't come to it if you don't want to bring a sense of play. I've had some folks who are in like real acute crises, and it can be useful, but it's no substitute for like acute care. But if you're ready for a state of kind of frisky play in the direction of where you want, and that feels right and feels like the time, it's really, really fun. And it's like really works, so it's good to know what it is and what it isn't.
I found a memorial for your dad online. He passed in 2018 at age 75. If you're open to it, how did dad's life and the way that he left shape the way that you hold space in the studio now and as a 50-year-old father?
That's a
How did that
beautiful
shape you?
question. Thank you. Let me think about that for a sec, because that is didn't see that one coming. A couple of things. My dad was open to some kooky shit. He would I'd see him in the morning meditating and holding some crystal and reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that was like, we used to make fun of, you know, but he was consistent, and he opened up that there are other ways, other realms. Another interesting thing too, that my dad had great friends, his friends, his guys. My dad had guys, and he had relationships with his buddies that were always, you could talk, like you and we could sit and talk about guitars, you and I, Chris, but we can also then drop in and really get into what's real. And I think my dad was at the cutting edge of that for where society was at, that he was
Totally.
successful in the law, had carriage. He was a Rotarian. He had some very, very basic sort of attributes, but he was willing to go both interpersonally and also spiritually break some new ground. And sometimes that generation did so awkwardly, but he was sort of a pioneer. He was brave in that way for seeking other ways. And yeah, and he carried himself. And another thing about my dad had polio when he was a kid, and he walked with a limp always, and he kind of always had a little bit of post polio, but my dad never quit. My dad was always moving forward. I saw him through so many setbacks on and off. I just saw his ride go up and down. And
Right.
he never quit on himself, and he never quit on trying to be a good person, a good father. And he had, he was like so many people, he was a complex guy. He had, I would say, periods where he did that better than others. It's who's to judge any other person's walk, but there was no quit in that guy. And I think that is timeless. And that is his greatest gift that he left me.
Love it. Thank you for being willing to talk
Thanks for
about
asking
that.
that.
What's the, what's the best room in Austin to test a new song?
Oh, that's easy. That's the Saxon Pub. That's my home away from home. I've been playing the Saxon for almost 20 years.
No shit.
And
That's cool.
when I would go to other cities and it wouldn't feel uncomfortable, I just close my eyes and pretend I'm in the Saxon Pub, or remember, if you will. Again, state of play.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
could affect my sort of inner state by giving myself the sensations of being in a more comfortable place. So there it is again, just
Love
being
it.
able
Yeah.
to maneuver. Yeah.
Who's an Austin artist right now that deserves 10x the listeners that nobody knows about?
Nobody knows about Izzy Crawler,
Easy.
and the world is going to know about Izzy Crawler. And Izzy does not have anything up right now. And Izzy will within 6 months. And the Izzy Crawler record, I'm a little biased because I produced it, but that album I'm as excited about it as anything I've ever worked on. And I'm as excited about it as almost anything I've listened to. And it's immodest, but she just writes such great songs and sings them so well. And we have had such a joy doing it that I literally feel like at this stage of my life, I just am doing, I just did my best work and her first work, but she's out of this world. I can't wait for you to hear it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Waiting for that to come out. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I sat down with that kid that was learning guitar in that band room, what is he asking you to, right now, 50-year-old Dan, to stop doing?
So the kid then is asking me to stop doing something. What wisdom did I have at that age? That's a cool question. Dang, son.
I tried to reverse the remembering process.
Yeah, no, he is saying, he's looking, he's like, look what happened. Like, don't doubt anything ever. Don't ever
Man,
doubt yourself. Don't ever wonder if it's possible. Just, just keep keeping. Like, look at it. It's beautiful.
I
Yeah.
love that. And then but my final question is, there's lots of footage and photographs of you playing a beautiful, I think it's like a lime green guitar. What kind of guitar is that?
Ooh,
Is it
which
lime green or is it like powder blue? It's like a light colored
Oh, I wish I knew which one that is. It might be a Martin hollow body or
Yeah, it's a hollow body. It was definitely a hollow body.
yeah,
Yeah.
that Martin, that's a dear friend of mine's. Interestingly enough, his dad passed and it was my dear friend Bob's. And
Oh, wow.
he let me play that for years. And it had this meaning. He was living with me at the time his dad passed, and we had this incredible thing. And I was playing his dad's guitar as a sort of tribute, energetic tribute to his dad. And Bob was one of these great cooperative components over my life. He's a visual artist, and we were kids in our 20s supporting each other as creatives and artists, and we didn't have jack or shit going on, but we saw it in each other. So that was, I think that's the guitar you're talking about. Hollow
Yeah,
body
very
Martin.
cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Daniel Barrett Sumber.
Eenie.
Sumbering. Yeah. Author, Grammy nominee, music producer, musician, performer, inspiration, father, husband, and dear friend. I thank you. This has been a fucking blast, man.
It flew by. I
So
was like,
cool.
what am I going to say for 2 hours?
Dude, we just did 2 hours. I went by like, tick.
It just flew by. I love you. I am so
I love
proud
you
of
too,
you and
man.
proud to know you and so excited to just talk to you and celebrate all the incredible work you're doing, all the way back to biology in 7th grade to
Yeah,
I
man.
wish we could play those two goofs this video,
I know, man.
that would be a
You're
real,
like, what on earth?
yeah, Bill and Ted's,
Yeah,
some kind
totally.
of crazy, strange
So
things
good.
afoot at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, everybody buy The Remembering Process. I'll put the link in the YouTube video. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Be well. Later, dude.